Lesson 2.4, Video 3. Now these two questions ask us to choose or make our own choice of what method to use. Now I'm not going to do graphing because we said that those were considered the most inaccurate, but also you'd have to have every equation solved for y, and that would not work in our second example. In example 4, the second one is solved for y, but I'd have to change the first. But again, since it's the most inaccurate and I don't have a graph to graph on, I'm going to choose one of the other two. Now notice that the first one has a variable solved for already. Since you have one of the equations solved for a variable, substitution would be the preference. So we would take 6x minus 7 and plug that into the y position. And that would give us 4x minus parentheses 6x minus 7 equals 3. This is a negative 1, so we have to distribute that, and we get 4x minus 6x plus 7, which is negative 1 times negative 7, equals 3. Combine like terms, and we get negative 2x plus 7 equals 3. Subtract 7, and we get negative 2x equals a negative 4. Divide by a negative 2, and x equals 2. In finishing, we'll take that and plug it into our equation that's solved for y. That would be the most efficient thing to do, and we get 6 times 2 minus 7. So y is equal to 12 minus 7. In other words, y is equal to 5. Okay, so substitution, even though it still seemed long, it was prepped and ready for that method. Let's try example 5 now. Notice that neither of the equations are solved for a variable, so let's look at elimination. If we look at our y's, they are both a negative 2. We want them to be opposite, so that one wouldn't take too much work. If we look at the x's, here we'd have to make them 24. Now they're both negative, which helps, but again I'd have to change both equations. So let's look back to the y's. Since the y's are already the same value, I can easily tweak this by multiplying only one of the equations by a negative 1. In doing that, I would create 3x plus 2y equals negative 27. The other equation I'll bring below is 8x minus 2y equals negative 6. So I only had to change one of the equations, and that was just by multiplying by a negative 1. So I can add them together, and my y's cancel, and I get 11x equals a negative 33. Divide by 11, and x equals a negative 3. In finishing, I'll take that and plug it into one of the two equations. I'm going to pick the top one, and I have 8. Now it's my x value that I have, so I got to make sure I plug that into the x variable. Minus 2y equals negative 6. So negative 24 minus 2y equals negative 6. I add 24 to both sides, and I get negative 2y equals 18. Divide by negative 2, and y equals a negative 9. And this ends lesson 2.4, video 3.